Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing Spike Lee's new Netflix film, The Five Bloods. This stars Delroy Lindo, Anthony Majors, Clark Peters, Norm Lewis, Isaiah Whitlock Jr. and Chadwick Boseman. The film really focuses on four African American Vietnam vets who ultimately returned to Vietnam 40 years after being there during the war, ultimately seeking the remains of their fallen squad leader, Norm, played by Chadwick Boseman, and also the gold fortune he helped them hide. As usual with films like this, things don't quite go according to plan. This journey they go on really tests them as friends, but also as human beings and men. And they're all sort of damaged by their experiences, especially David, played by Delroy Lindo, who's really damaged by what his experiences. And it's really had this profound effect on him that he doesn't really know how to make sense of things. And it isn't until he gets there he starts to accept certain things about himself he didn't know how to accept when he wasn't there. And obviously the film returns them back to a certain war, an internal war and an external war, as they face the things they've struggled with through the years and the effects that war has had on them at the time and on them now as men in their 60s. This is another great Spike Lee film. It really feels like him. I think this is one of his better films, to tell you the truth. I really was immersed in this from beginning to end. He has this ability of slowly sucking you into a story, and this is a great example of that. It really is a film that is in three parts. The first part is where we're introduced to all the characters and the situation that they find themselves in, and who they are as men and people, the effect that returning to Vietnam has on them, and how they're all sort of seeking something. They're all sort of trying to accept things about themselves, but also to forgive themselves for certain things, and to make sense of the damage that the war has had on them and why it's had that damage on them. And the second part of the film really feels like a fun adventure movie. You know, it's about these four men trying to not only find the remains of their lost comrade Norm, but also find this lost treasure they had, this treasure they had left there and that has been buried over the 40 years. And it's about them finding it. They have a metal detector, and when they find bits and pieces of it, it's sort of like they return to being kids. That joy and excitement of finding mysterious things hidden in the ground, and it sort of has a Spielberg playful wonder about it that I really like, with the music used as well. I think this is really great. The third part of the film really feels like they've returned to war. There's this whole sequence that happens. Things don't go according to plan. There's some shocking moments in it where things happen that you kind of feel were going to happen, but it didn't happen the way you expected. It sort of sucks you in, and it's kind of an exciting element, and it's about them using the skills they learned in war to sort of get to the end of the story. I think this is really solid in that regard. I think it's filled with really great moments. I like the use of cameras. There's moments where characters hug each other and they're sort of done in two separate shots. So when they first embrace from one side and then the other. I know people have criticised him for that, but it just sort of feels like he's really capturing a moment. He's capturing it from different sides, and it's this moment of just two people hugging that is important to show the power of that hug and what each person sort of means to them, I guess. I think all the acting is solid. I think Delroy Lindo, who's a really solid actor, I've followed him for many years. He gets to really have a character sink his teeth into. A character has PTSD and is affected by a Vietnam War. He has nightmares and he sees ghosts, and it's had this really profound effect on him, and it sort of has created a rift, an issue between him and his son, that he holds his son at arm's length and can't really feel like he can connect to him or anybody else. The only time he really feels like himself is when he's around the old squad he was part of in Vietnam, but even that sort of has strain in the effects of him. And him returning to Vietnam, it's like he's trying to deal with something he went through, an experience he had there. He's trying to deal with guilt. He's trying to deal with the damage that he feels he's caused and the damage on his psyche that the war had on him. And it's really about him seeking the truth. It's about him trying to seek forgiveness for what he thinks he's done wrong. Get to see his slow descent. You sort of meet him to begin with and he seems okay, and then he slowly goes a bit mad, and he sort of goes against his friends, and he sort of all leads to a conclusion of acceptance in the end. And his arc is fantastic. He's the most interesting and complex and layered character in the whole film. Even though the other characters have their little bits and pieces, he's the one who has the most interesting story, I think, in many regards. Clark Peters, who's been around, who's done a variety of things, plays Otis. He's kind of an interesting character as well. He's trying to keep the people together. There's a whole history with him where he had a relationship with a Vietnamese woman during the Vietnam War. And he returns and reconnects with her. And he's sort of a driving force for a lot of the film. And his choices are kind of interesting. The one that's sort of well adjusted, but he's still trying to make sense of things and the experiences that he had. And the other two do a really great job as well. And I really like Chadwick Boseman. I think he's solid in this. He plays Norm, their squad leader who was killed during the Vietnam War. He's kind of an interesting character. There's some really great moments with him where he's trying to teach his squad to accept things and to don't just act but think about what they're doing. And during the sequence we see during the flashbacks, which is probably my favourite part of the film, and I would like to see much more of this, a radio report comes on and starts talking about how Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated. And just by them hearing that, the effect that has on them, where 4 of them want to go and just kill people because they feel angry and they want people to suffer like they're suffering. But Norm, he just sort of tells them, no, that's not what we need to do. We don't need to react like that. We can be angry and frustrated about it, but we can't just use violence with violence. And this sequence is really great, but it's a really great moment. And there's so many great moments throughout the film that Spike sort of creates. And it looks at, Delroy Lindo's character and his relationship with his son, and how his son's trying to get his acceptance, trying to get his father to be proud of him and to respect him as a man. But certain things happen through the film that he starts to see his father as as the person he is. Shows how his father can't accept his son. His father blames him for something that happened when his son was little. That it has this sort of barrier between these two men. And it's really about the son seeking the love from the father and the father struggling to give him that love. It has a powerful ending, I think, in a lot of ways, just what transpires and how having the gold causes people to become greedy. People can have all the good intentions in the world, but when money or gold comes into someone's life, it sort of changes them, shapes them. They start doing things they didn't think they would do, and they start pushing people away because they're greedy and they want all the things for themselves, all the money for themselves, and it sort of deals with it as well. Delroy's character is also voted for Trump, and he's a Trump supporter, and he wears the hat, Make America Great Again. Because there's a clip at the end of the film where Martin Luther King Jr. talks about that in a speech about making America great again. And it's like Spike wants to take that back from what Trump's used it for and created it for. This has a political element to it. It does go into looking at Black Lives Matter and everything in regards to what's happening with that, because it's very present and very relevant. It looks at the state of America and having Trump as a president and the effect that that's had on its people and the country itself. There is another interesting choice that he does make. When we have all the flashback stuff of Vietnam and all the men in during the war, and we look at Norm and him being the squad leader, Chadwick Boseman he's in his 40s, but he doesn't quite look like that, so he can sort of pass as younger. But what he does is he keeps all the older actors he's used in the present day and just puts them in that particular period. He doesn't de-age them or anything. He doesn't have younger actors play this. He has the same actors who are men in their 60s. But what I got from this, and why I think he did this choice, was all these sequences are memories that these characters have. So they're envisioning this experience they had, and the only way they can envision it is that maybe they can't see themselves as young men, so they just see themselves as now. So it's a visual memory. It's like they're putting themselves at their age now into a memory they had 40 years ago. I think that was an interesting choice. Some people may not like that and think they should have younger actors play or de-aging, but I just like the choice there, and that's sort of what I got from it. Final thoughts. At the heart of it, I think it's really about people coming to terms with things, accepting things, forgiving themselves for things they think they've done wrong, trying to make up for things, trying to make things right for stuff they think they've done wrong. And looking at how the effect that the war has had not only on the Americans who went to war, but also the Vietnamese people who lost a lot of friends, lost family. There's a lot of violence in regards to these sort of people. And how the effects that it has on both sides for these particular groups of people is really fascinating. I'm going to give Da 5 Bloods 4 out of 5. I thought this was solid, interesting. If you're a fan of Spike Lee, you'll really enjoy this. I think it's a really solid film. I'm putting it on my top 10 of the year. Obviously, it's been a bit hard to watch any new movies, but this is definitely up there because I thoroughly enjoyed my experience with it. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit subscribe at the bottom. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.